Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Folklore of the Earth. Here today we have Derek Chapman, our energy healer, our Earth Energies expert, and I'm just being guided this morning to really talk about darkness and what's actually happening in the Earth in terms of the ascension process. A lot of people are talking about the world becoming much more heart-centered and overcoming darkness. And yeah, welcome, Derek. Good morning.
Good morning. Nice to see you again, Emily.
You too. And yes, and what's really informed a lot of my work recently is the idea of lots of people tuning into their spirit guides, a lot of people tuning into their spirit, their soul. And what is happening is that we're becoming very aware that there is darkness. You know, there is darker energies can work through spirit guides or imitate them or imitate the light. And people have very much been under attack. And when I start talking about darkness and evil and things like that, I think people may think that, oh, I know what that looks like. I know what darkness looks like. And today, I feel I'd like to share that actually we don't always know what it looks like. And it's much more of a case of, for me, knowing how it feels and knowing how it operates so that we can bring the light through our work and we can always work with the light. And I know that something that really supports me is working with the light of Christ consciousness as well. So I'm just going to ask you, in what ways has darker energies appeared to you, Derek? You know, I know that you know this and understand this on like a much bigger level and where this comes from, but kind of where do you encounter this energy? Where have you encountered this energy? Because I feel that people watching will be really will recognize themselves within this, and this will be really supportive to them.
Well, that's a good question. Where does this darkness come from? Well, for me, when I went into the light, this darkness came in as well, and it comes up. So more light you go into, the more darkness it comes in. Now, for me, the problem was, with this darkness coming in, you have to learn about the darkness as well as the light. Yeah. Because, as you say, the darkness is not what you really think it is either. You can be in the dark with no light in the room, but you can actually see pretty well. So how can you do that? So how can you manage to do that? It's because the light is within the darkness and is balanced. That's fine when it's balanced, but when it's unbalanced, it's totally different. When it's unbalanced, and what I mean by unbalanced is there's usually the negativity gets stronger than the light, and it comes in, and as you say, it imitates. I had my guide Dega came to speak to me many times, and I've spoken about Dega, and he was a dragon energy. And I remember I was speaking to Dega, which I thought was I was speaking to Dega, but I wasn't. Yeah. It was absolutely wasn't him. And how did I know? I didn't know at that time, but I knew when he came back and I said to him, oh, I was speaking to you. And he said, no, you weren't.
No.
You weren't speaking to me. So these energies, these energies manipulate and they can copy any kind of light energy. And they can't do that.
So I have had an experience as well. So just like you, I have had experience of my team of guides coming in, and I knew straight away that they were imposters. But if I didn't really know about the darkness, I didn't know that all these things are possible, then I would have doubted myself. And through my teacher, through my teachings, and you know, I have ongoing support and learning through circles of people, and we who know about this stuff, and we question ourselves loads, and we really understand about kind of like, well, what's happening now? What is the energy like? What have you found? Because normally when something's happening to one person, it's happening to lots of people. And me and you did some work before Christmas, didn't we? Which was connecting the goddess Mother Earth in with her own communication, so she could communicate more clearly with the other planetary elements and energies.
Yes.
And what happened straight away to me was that I became under attack. I was given an implant by a nefarious energy that was essentially convincing me that I didn't know what I was doing. And we recognized that, and then we removed that. And this is what's happening to the spiritual community so often. And unless you really have really, really clear protocols of connecting with knowing who you're connecting with, and knowing that you're working with the Christed light, know that you're working with the goddess energy, and you are sure of your own practice and bringing your safety and protection, you're vulnerable to attack, aren't you, essentially?
Yes, you are vulnerable for attack. And if you don't, as Dega always told me, know thy energies, because you need to know thy energies. And he learned me, he says, when I come to talk to you again, you'll know that it's me because you'll know my energy. And I said, yes, I did, but they manipulated to a point that I thought it was you. And this is the problem. So how do you stop that? Well, when I was doing that, I was dowsing, and I douse a lot actually, and I use a pendulum an awful lot. And when an energy comes to speak to me now, I asked 3 times, in true love and light, are you who you say you are? And you'll get 3 yeses. And if you don't, they cannot. The rules of the universe says if you ask 3 times and they give you the same answer, then it's the same path. But they can't do that. The darkness can't do that. They can just do it twice, and in the 3rd time they'll lose the no. That's not.
So I'll give you an example. I've had energies coming to me saying that they were, well, revealing themselves to me in a very kind of archangel way, or with kind of very kind of gentle, benevolent seeming energies. And I've asked this question 3 times, and then the energies, they either stay exactly the same and get stronger, and I get sent more information. For example, one of the ways that my guides speak to me, communicate with me, is through my heart. They know that I'll really feel a heart energy. I get tingling on my face for confirmation. Mother Earth comes up and she puts her arms around me, and I get this real confirmation. When I ask 3 times and it isn't that, it disappears, or it turns into its true form that it is. And that is why this type of vigilance is so important. And you have to really check in with yourself regularly. And I think a lot of people don't have a grounded practice, which is about having not only protection protocols, but also protocols of knowing thyself, knowing what your energy is, having people like yourself, Derek, to check in with. I know we've checked in with each other, said, oh, something's gone wrong here, can you tune into my energy, or vice versa. And I think that's so valuable. So have a trusted spiritual companion, and also, you know, have these ways of overcoming the energies. It's not, people can get very carried away and excited. Oh, I'm doing this, I'm channeling all of these energies, but it isn't. If you feel drained, if you feel strained, if your personality changes, these are all red flags to say that this isn't, you are not channeling who you think you are.
Yes, exactly.
Do you want to speak into that a little bit more, Derek?
Yes, and in this, it's difficult, because it is difficult, and I know what like it was when I first started out in this, is sorting out the light from the darkness, because they were coming in, and they were really annoying me in the end. And then I just said, no more of this. And I just stood my ground with them. But these energies, they come into you. They come in. Well, what I'm understanding is they come into you through your aura usually, and they come into you. And when they're into your body, and I've had energies in my body, whether they were light energies or dark energies, I'm not sure, because they just went. And you know that they're there. But how did they get there? Because they manipulate your mind and come into you and through your emotional body, usually through your emotional bodies. And they always come through your emotional bodies. Now, how do we stop that? Is by acknowledging that energy is there, basically. Yeah. Don't dismiss it, because if you dismiss it, it won't go away. But if you acknowledge it, it will go away. It's a strange thing, but it does. If you acknowledge that energy is there and annoying you, let it come in and speak to it. If you can speak to the energies, let it come in and speak to you, and you'll realize the rubbish that it speaks to you about, and then you know it's total opposite of what the light is. Total opposite. So if you know your light and know your energies there, when these energies come in, they speak totally different. They're absolutely the opposite of what the light is speaking.
So thank you so much for that, because one of the really, I just want to say that one of the really human common sense ways to recognize darkness, because it could be that you're doing a group and you've got somebody that's present in one of your groups that you're holding, or you've got a circle of people, or you're listening to somebody talking, and one of the real red flags is that they're saying lots of things which are kind of ticking the right boxes, but they're not actually making any sense or saying anything, because darkness doesn't have the clarity, because it's kind of, in a way, the darkness is not fueled by love and light. It's an inner war within itself. So you're going to always have these kind of contradictions that come up. And, you know, there's going to be lots of people watching now who are going to be like, penny's going to be dropping about different experiences that they've had, or entering into spaces, or because it often happens, you know, spiritual communities, very much where you've got the performance of spirituality, but not the essence. And we're really, really getting into a time where we're splitting this, you know, the reality of healing, the reality of moving the consciousness to light, and what is performance and what is darkness. Do you want to speak a little bit more to that, Derek?
Well, darkness as well we need the darkness as well. Don't get me wrong, because we need a balance between the two. Darkness also makes you think in a totally different way. And then the light comes in and it speaks to you in a totally different way as well. So you've got the choice. You have the choice. And this is what you'd understand. You either got a choice to go to the light or a choice to go to the darkness. Now, my choice is always light, because the darkness, if you go into the darkness for a while and walk through the dark veil, and we all have to do this, because I had to do this as well. I had to walk through the dark veil to get to the light. And it can be very scary. It can be very unsettling in many, many ways. But if you're true to yourself and true to your understanding, you can walk through that darkness and it doesn't affect you at all. And some people do that because they have faith in the light, and they know and as I said, they know their energy. They know who they are. They know what the energy is there. They know the frequency of that energy. And it's down to frequency, because the frequency of that energy is totally different from the frequency of the darkness.
So I'm just going to say something, which is
Yes.
that when I have been working with clients one-to-one and I have a suspicion that they've been struggling with darker energies, they've got entity attachments, they've got attacks of either thought forms, implants, anything like that. One of the first things I recognize is confusion and contradiction.
Yes.
What I can hear and what I can sense is, and also an unwillingness as well to be seen, or projection onto others about what is happening. So when we return to full sovereignty, which is as a shamanic healer, my aim for my clients is that their trust, their compass, and their knowing comes back into their bodies, and they realign with the truth of their soul, with the light of Christ's consciousness. Now, that is my goal, because if they're relying on any other energies, and recently what's come through is ChatGPT. They've been referring to AI, other knowledge. You know, and AI is a robot. It's something that's been created, but it's also can be perceived as a darkness because it's something that pulls authority away from the center. So when I talk about darkness in my sessions with my clients, and they're kind of like, I'm confused, I don't know which way forward, I don't know who to trust, these are all signs that there's been interference. Whether that's trauma that gets released with implants of thought forms, or it could be entities, or it could be attacks as well, psychic attacks. And I want to share that now, because I think that what happens is that people have these words and they think, oh, that's one thing. For example, oh, it's only evil if it's like an entity attack, or if it's only this. And I want to talk to you in about the fullness of the language. The fullness of the language is that you might just be feeling really confused and doubting yourself. And that in itself is a sign of attack. Do you want to speak a little bit more into that, Derek? Does that make sense?
Well, identities and everything, yes, because they use the darkness. But identities need the light to create. And I've realized this as well. And the identities go and they stick onto you, and they go into you in the end. Because you allowed them to do that.
Yeah.
You allowed them to do that. Nobody else has allowed them but you. Because of the information that you've been getting and in your mind is not the truth of the information. And they just subtly move in. And I've seen many people, I've done lots of healings with some people, and I see the energies. And I see the soul actually sitting on and it shows this, the right shoulder. And they're sitting there, and they can't get into that person. Yeah. And I said to them, why can you not get into your person? Because they said that the person, that energy in there is not allowing him, the soul of it, the soul of the human, to allow to go back into the person. Wow. Okay. I said to myself, okay, so what I do then is I instruct the soul to go back in, because the soul doesn't really, it seems silly, but the soul needs instruction to do that.
Yeah.
And then when the soul goes into the person heals itself, because the energy of the soul puts the light through the body and cleanses it. And I've seen this many times.
So this soul retrieval, so we know that we can have like fragments of soul. So you can have like the whole soul, and also have fragments of soul that are lost in different traumatic events in people's lives. And what's coming to mind at the moment as I'm talking is the way that you've experienced this as well, the kind of like the soul shattering.
Yes.
Now, when the reason why soul is so important is because it's like the seed. It carries all the information for the human to kind of know itself, and that's unique for each person. Now, soul loss is also a bit of a safety device. What do I mean by that? I mean that if, for example, people go through huge processes of grief, accidents, illnesses, and things like that, and because the intensity that keeping the soul with them, it breaks. And what we don't know how to do, unless we work with a shamanic healer, we work with energy healers, is that we don't know how to bring those elements back into the body. And but without those soul elements being part of the human, we're lost. It's like a plant without its seed. The seed of the plant has got all the information that the plant needs to know to grow, and how the flower's going to be, and what seasons to come out in, and all the rest of it, and how it fits in with the divine consciousness of the divine aspect of itself and the cosmos. Without that, we're fragmented. So yeah.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And it's the spark within us, as you would say. And everybody's got a spark within them. And if you ignite that spark, then the light just starts to come out. And I've seen this many, many times. And the healing, people that have got huge depression, huge issues in their lives, and are trying to get through all this. And I'll tell you a story of one person that I know that was very, very depressed. And he explained to me, he says, I always fall in this hole. I always go in this hole, and I fall down this hole. And he says, it takes me a long time to get back up from this hole. And I said, oh. And I said, well, why not put rails around the hole? In your mind, put rails around the hole. And he said, oh, I thought not. And I says, when you fall in, you hold on to the rails and you pull yourself out of the hole again. Well, that's a good idea. 6 months later, I met him and I said, have you fallen in the hole? No, he says, I haven't fallen in the hole. But he said, I've been there many times and I've holded on to the rails. And I said, well, that's brilliant. And I said, you didn't go down there. No, he said, I didn't go down. So little things like that makes a big difference. And then I met him 2 years after. And I said, well, how are you getting on with the rails in the hole? He said, I took a bulldozer and I folded up. I pushed a hole empty. I leveled it so the hole's not there anymore. And he is a completely different person. He's married. He's got kids. He's just he's just a sort of the earth. It really is. The difference in him is just unbelievable. And all I did was just did that to him. So that lets you see it when you do something like that, and it sounds very little at the time, but it's a huge step for the consciousness to move forward.
Yeah.
For him. And that is just one person that I did. There's many, many more. But you can do help by energetically, what I call energetically work, because that's all I did. I just spoke to them. I never put my hands onto them. I never did healing onto them, because he didn't really believe in the healings, but he believed that what I was saying was a good idea because it made sense to him. It made sense. I think
isn't that the art of healing, that you kind of like you are able to communicate with all of the aspects of the person and the soul to give them what they need to be able to heal themselves and bring through their own wisdom. Very often my healings involve channeling guides, soul, illuminated ancestors of the person, so that they can really hear the truth. And once you realign back to that truth, away from all the stories, I think depression is something that's so interesting, because it's when people talk about having depression or having other mental illnesses, it really steps the locus of control outside of the person. It's like there's this depression here, and it's affecting me, affecting my body, and my soul and my mind. Whereas looking at it as an energy, and showing that actually we have the power within ourselves, we have the locus of control within ourselves, and if we can find the light within that, then we can overcome the things that are pushing down on us. And that's it. It's storytelling. It's about completely overcoming and rewriting the stories that we tell ourselves a lot of the time, isn't it?
Yes.
I'm really wanting to move into something now, which is to do with the stories that we tell ourselves. I have never really felt comfortable as an English woman, and I'll tell you why. So many years ago, in my 20s, I was over in Ireland, and I had a partner over there, and this was in Southern Ireland, and they were all the family was sat around the fire, and they were singing songs, and the whole pain and trauma of what the English have done in Ireland came through my whole body, and I was uncontrollably crying. Given that it was a family party, it wasn't really very appropriate, and it was kind of like such, you have these experiences, and at the time you're kind of like, oh, I just need to hide in the toilet. I don't know what's going on. But like revisiting those moments within myself now, and the land healing and the kind of stories within the land, the stories within the soil that we really, really connect with when we're working, Derek. I understand that moment perfectly now.
Yeah.
I understand my body can feel, my senses can feel when an energy isn't right within the land. And what I didn't have at the time was the ability to tune into the energies and ask what needed to happen, because it could have been very well, I mean, this has happened since, that I needed to, as an English woman, bow down to that land and apologize on behalf of my ancestors, or just acknowledge it and give offerings. I didn't have those things, and it kind of stayed in my body for a while, and I felt huge shame. It got stuck. Okay. But one of the reasons that I find the work that we're doing so exciting now is that it's not about keeping the story stuck. It's not about keeping the shame stuck. It's about the living organisms of the energetics of the land. And, we've recently worked with a vortex in Ireland, that haven't we? And
Yes.
I just wanted to ask you, I experience land as emotion. I go to a land, I feel, and the dark energies come through, and I get a story. That's how I connect with land. And then I ask the guardians of the land and my guide, what needs to happen here? How does that relate to how you see things? Because I know I'm more connected with the goddess, and you're generally in a spaceship. And I just want to, how do you connect with this?
I connect with the land very, very often, very, very, every day I connect with the land, to be quite honest. I connect with the land. I go and walk and go to a tree and connect into the land. And the land, I'm staying here at the Scottish borders just now. Now in the borders here, there was the rivers and everything, and they fought the English every day, near enough. They did something, and there was always wars and God knows what all. When I came here first, I noticed how gentle the place was, even although we had all this wars, the land. And I said to myself, why is this? So, but what I've got, my understanding now is, because we've got the River Tweed goes right through. It's a big river. It cleanses a lot of the energies in the land, and the energies of the land connect into the river, because the water is very important. Water is important. Comes through the land. It cleanses the land. It cleanses the energies of the land, and then it goes out and goes into the sea. You know,
Yeah.
when you think about that, that's just amazing. But us, ourselves, our humans, are basically the same. Because in us, we have the river. In
Yeah.
us, we have our veins and everything that goes to the heart. And the heart is the pump. It, it keeps you living. It keeps you going. So the heart is very important to the energies of everything. And the heart energy is what we're working with just now. And we have to connect into the earth, and the earth energies come up and go into your heart. And then what's happening now, the consciousness is rising. So we're connecting into a higher consciousness. And in doing this, we're connecting not only our heart, but our mind as well. So we're changing lots of things. And yes, I've seen many times I've come to an area in the land and I have to go down on my knees and I say to the land, I am very, very sorry. I apologize to it. And it comes up. The energy just comes up and comes around me. Well, this is what happens to me. It comes around me and gives me like a big hug and say, it's okay. I appreciate you acknowledging me. And there it goes. Now, it's just amazing when that happens. I can tell you, the feeling of that is just, whoa. The tears come down on me, and I'm a man, and I don't supposed to cry, but I cry a lot because you can't help yourself but cry because the emotion of that is just, it's just amazing. So the new way of doing things, what I feel is a new way of doing things, is that we're doing a lot of work together, and you're working with the goddess, and I'm working with the land, and I also work up in the universe. And I also got new information through. Since I've been starting doing this work with you, Emily, what happens down here also happens in the universe.
Yeah, for sure.
And what happens in the universe happens down here too. So it's vice
Absolutely.
versa.
What I really wanted to share was that one really strong message that I've been guided to share today as well is that there's a lot of shame around being human, and because of the way that we have treated the earth and the way that we have lost the connection. And we can't connect in this way when we're holding shame. And what often happens is this kind of like this lack of awareness of how important we are as humans, as people, as the living, breathing, walking elements in this earth. And what our healing work has really shown me is that when we co-create, when we collaborate with the energies of the earth, with the elements, that's why we're here.
Yes.
The elements
Definitely.
need us, and we need the elements. The energies need us, and we need the energies. And there is no hierarchy, because once you tune into the God essence, the goddess essence, and the knowledge, we're all working from the same vortex of light. And so anybody who is sort of entering into action about kind of like, oh, we need to heal the earth, and what I would kind of classify as a bit of a crusade mission, beware of it coming from the brain, beware of it coming from guilt, because that isn't the energy that the goddess wants you to bring through right now. She wants you to feel her love as her children. And and this is what process that I had to go through before doing this work, was being fully initiated with the goddess, as being fully in tune with my own essence, my own love. And as a mother, and being mothered by her, she did not want any interference in guilt, shame, because actually for her, the guilt and the shame is darkness, because disempowers people, which is actually against the religious version of guilt from Old Testament Christianity. And so, yeah, I'm just going to leave that there because I feel that more will come through around that. But did you want to speak to that, Derek, a little bit?
Well, emotions is coming through, and you feel the guilt, and you feel all this. I was going to say negative thing, but it's not always negative, because we need to feel things as well. And sometimes by feeling, you get the experience and you move on from that experience and you learn. And we need that as well. We need that too. But I understand what you're saying, and it's very, very difficult when you feel all this emotions coming up and into you. And this is why we're healing the emotional body at the moment, because the emotional body of the person is the light body, and I call it a light body, that needs the most love and care at the moment. And the only person that can do that is yourself. You need to understand, but the minute you got the knowledge to do that, is the minute you heal it.
Yeah.
And in a way, you don't need to do anything else but acknowledge it. Acknowledge that is there. Acknowledge that I have got a problem there. Maybe ask for it to be healed, and you will, and it will come to a point where it will be healed.
Yeah.
This, it's a strange, it's a different way of thinking, and then different way of thinking and looking at things in a different way heals them a lot quicker than sometimes going to a therapist and trying to get it sorted that way.
Absolutely. So being able to see and having that compass points of, well, in my language, in my way of explaining it, it's like me anchoring myself with the truth and the lightness and the quieted consciousness is a way of it reattuning myself and recognizing when any energies that I don't want to keep in my field are there and present, and then asking them to leave, commanding them to leave. And also doing that as well in deep compassion. So, just like the water, the heart is like this river.
Yeah.
When this guilt, when this shame comes up about connecting with who we are as people, our histories, our ancestries, I always have this phrase, which is like, let it flow into the river of life, because the river, it's the energies that keep that river flowing. Once that river stays still, everything gets stuck and stops. When emotion stops, when emotion gets stuck and it isn't acknowledged, when it isn't felt, it all gets stuck and stop and cause stagnancy and illness, and the same in the earth as well. So, tuning into all of that is so important. I feel like I'm going to wind it up there today, Derek, because we've talked about some really big things of the darkness, how it can affect our energies, a little bit of an introduction to you and your healing as well. So finally, what would you say is the thing that the land has really taught you about the way energy works? If that isn't...
The land taught me so much things about the energies, but who taught me the most was my guide, because I accepted my guide Dagger there, and he told me so much stuff about energies and so much stuff about the land. And the energies of the land is very important for the way forward for humanity. We need, because the energies, as I said, the consciousness is rising of the earth, and the earth is being pulled to a different place in the universe. And by doing that, the dark veil, as I call the dark veil, the dark energies, are being left behind. So So they are being left behind. And because it meant to happen that way, because we're moving forward. The earth is moving forward. And it hasn't been done, this hasn't been done for a long, long time, that the earth is moving like this. And the goddess, as you say, is now in contact with the rest of the universe. She's in contact with everything now. And it's going to have a massive effect on this earth. And it's already has done. Look what's happening. And everybody says, oh, you know, there's going to be a third world war. There's so much negativity going on. But that negativity is leaving. It's leaving. It can't stand here anymore. And that's why it's fighting. It's like it's taking its last stand. And it'll do anything and anything to stop it, because it feels that it's going to die, which is a heap of rubbish, because it won't die. What'll happen, it'll go and it has to clear itself out. And by doing that, the light will be cleared and the darkness will be cleared. So that's what's happening in the world just now. So this is why it's so important to connect into the earth. As we said, we connect into the earth. We connect into the energy flows that's coming through, because the energy is immense at the moment coming from there. I can tell, because I did work, say, 20, 30 years ago on the earth. And when I do work on the earth now, it is totally, totally different. Now, you might say that I may be changed. And I said, yes, I have changed a lot since then. But I had to change. I had no option but to change. Because the light that was coming in just healed me to a point that we're doing this work together, Emily. And this is why it's important to connect yourself in, connect yourself into the light, know your energies, know your light, so that you won't be deceived by the darkness. But the darkness can only do one thing, really, and that makes you think in a different way, so that you use your energy in a total different way.
So when I work with the goddess and her energies, what comes through from her is that she is much more connected with the rest of the cosmos, and it's her part of her role is bringing the great mother, the love of the mother, through her energy to each and every aspect of this beautiful cosmos that we live in. So one of the things that I want to talk to Derek about next time, and I'm really keen to really understand, is that as healers, we've kind of worked very much in isolation. We've had different disciplines or different ideas of things. And what I really witness at the moment is the coming together of all of those aspects. And I know that Derek and I both have past life, past consciousness experiences in Egypt. And we have both worked with pyramid energy. And next time we meet, I really, really want to bring this wisdom forward around how does the healer use the earth energies, use the energies of the cosmos to enhance, cleanse, activate, magnify the healing energies that they're bringing through. And also, sometimes when we work as well, it's the purpose behind it is to cleanse the pathways, to reactivate the channels, to get the waterways, the arteries of the earth moving more fluidly with love, with honouring, and bringing in the deities again that have guarded those spaces. So please join us next time as we investigate the historical and the present healing energies of the earth. Thank you so much for listening, and please post any questions you have underneath. Lots of love, and I'll see you soon.